The 70 series Land Cruiser is heavy, slow, and thirsty. Everyone talks about tuning them for more power, but here's the twist. The biggest improvement isn't the power at all. It is far more important than that. So let's talk about it. About 3 months ago, and in preparation for towing my trailer, I had both the engine and the gearbox remapped on the Cruiser using a Just Autos tune. And since then I have been testing it out, but the outcomes really surprised me. I tested the tune for around 5,000 kilometers in all kinds of driving conditions. Highway, city, daily driving, low range, sand driving, and everything you can imagine in between. Even idling for 30 minutes at a time with the air conditioner running on full blast, waiting for the kids to come out of school. And in this video, I'm going to be sharing with you what actually changed on the dyno, on the graph itself, how the car feels to drive, and in the end, how it's impacted the fuel consumption and range. But before we get into any of that, just to be clear, this is not a sponsored video. I paid full price for this service. Just Autos don't know me and I don't know them. The only connection I have is with all 4 mechanical who installed the tune. They are a customer of mine who purchased RGL coatings, so I'm just giving them the respect of business like what they give me, and I want to spend money back with them as they spend it with me. Therefore, no discounts, no kickbacks, just my own unbiased results. But if you are watching Just Autos, don't be shy to share some love with me because I wouldn't mind it. Let's start off with the dyno numbers and I'll explain what they mean to us normal people. As you can see in the dyno chart right here, there was quite a big jump in power and torque. At 2000 RPM, the power went up by around 47% from 107 to 157 horsepower, and torque increased by 42% from 360 Newton meters to 510 Newton meters. And for those that are calculating and comparing, it is worth mentioning that if the Cruiser had factory tires, the numbers would be different to this due to a lower rotating mass that impacts the dyno results. But the difference you feel when driving is the delta increase, and it's what we're specifically looking at today. 40+% gained in power and torque. And although this sounds impressive, and there are results that show this kind of thing online, it is nothing compared to the actual improvement in the power band where you drive the car. Between 1000 to 2000 RPM, the tuned map is making roughly the same torque as the factory tune at 2300 to 3000 RPM. In other words, driving the Cruiser normally with the Just Autos tune where the revs sit between 1000 and 2000 RPM, roughly where you're driving all the time, is the same as driving the factory tune at 2300 to 3000 RPM with the pedal to the metal. And that is a big thing because you're effectively reducing how much the engine needs to spin by 1/3. 33% less rotation means 33% less friction, 33% less wear, and that's why big diesel engines last so long. It's because they rev very slow and they last a very long time because of that. Now, by this point, if your fingers are burning for the comment section, keep watching to the end because I am going to speak about the reliability and warranty topic later on in this video. But trust me when I say that the power is far from the only thing I'm here to talk about. The biggest difference to how the Land Cruiser drives now is actually the gearbox mapping in combination with the power, not just the power itself. Before the tune, the automatic gearbox was horrendous to drive, especially for someone like me who spent the last 6 years before the Land Cruiser driving 8 speeds that have gearboxes in my previous cars, which are renowned to be fantastic. The gearbox in this thing hunted between gears, it flared the torque converter for no reason, it would drop back a gear at the slightest tap of the throttle when it didn't need to, and takes forever to go back to that gear that it should be on, especially on the highway where sometimes it just never went back into 6th. After the tune, it drives like a modern car. It keeps the engine under 2000 RPM whenever it can without it being lazy or dead, and it holds the higher gears properly. Especially on the highway, it doesn't bounce between 5th and 6th gear, it doesn't flare up the revs for no reason, and honestly I haven't even used the torque converter lock function yet in the tune. At 110 kilometers an hour, the Cruiser sits very comfortably in 6th gear instead of dropping back to 5th and staying there. And this is really frustrating when you're driving for so many hours on the highway, 8 hours at a time, and every time it goes back into 5th gear because you want it to go back into 6th to save some fuel, you need to pop it back into manual mode, put it in 6th gear, and then disengages the cruise control. So now after the tune, the Land Cruiser will drop to 5th when it has to, but then as soon as the load eases, it quickly goes back to the right gear instead of being stuck in the incorrect gear with the RPMs all over the place. But with all this said, the gearbox tune is most noticeable on sand driving. It is a completely different car. Before the tune, I visited Stockton Beach and the car was undrivable in high range. It was either bogging down or revving its head off, and because you can't disable the stability control in high range, it kept cutting out and it was very annoying to drive, to the point where I just gave up and I put it in low range and I just had to deal with the high revs. Now in high range, it picks a suitable gear and it stays there. It still aims to hold that 2000 RPM point, so it's normally on third gear at 40 kilometers an hour. And no matter how soft the sand was, I didn't really feel the need to go into low range. I only switched to low range for the dunes because that was the right thing to do and I didn't want to strain the car more than I had to. Therefore, between the extra power, torque and the gearbox finally being a modern gearbox, the Cruiser is a pleasure to drive with this tune. However, here comes the big one. We haven't even talked about the best thing with this tune yet and why I got it to begin with, and that is the fuel economy. Before the tune, and with the figures corrected for the rotating difference between 33s and stock tires, the normal highway driving consumption for me was about 13.6 liters per 100. The average daily driving was closer to 14 liters per 100, and my worst experience with just local driving and school pickups and drop-offs was 17.2 liters per 100 kilometers. After the tune, across all conditions, city, highway, camping trips, loaded, unloaded, I am seeing a consistent saving of around 1.5 to 2.5 liters per 100 kilometers. Even with a double swag on the roof, going to multiple camping trips at 110 kilometers an hour, with the sand driving that I just spoke about, the fuel level never consumed more than 13.5 liters per 100, which is substantial. And here is a back-to-back example to back up what I'm saying for you based on my last fill up, where I drove 2 big trips loaded. I went to the Hunter Valley, which was my previous video that I shared on this channel, and then I went to the Blue Mountains 3 weeks after that, with plenty of city driving and idling in between. So it wasn't exactly the best conditions to save fuel. According to the GPS, the distance traveled was 911 kilometers, and I filled up 112 liters, giving a fuel consumption of around 12.3 liters per 100 kilometers. Assuming about 18 liters left in the tank at 12.3 liters per 100 kilometers, that's roughly another 140 kilometers of driving range still to be had. Compared to how it was previously when I drove from Sydney to Melbourne, I got 890 kilometers from the full tank of fuel plus an additional 20-liter jerry can. And that worked out to be around 15.7 liters per 100 kilometers. And that wasn't stop-go traffic. That was just sitting on the highway at 110 kilometers per hour on cruise control with nothing at all on the roof. That is almost a saving of 3.5 liters per 100 kilometers. That is huge. Not just for your wallet, but the driving range as well. And although I'm yet to travel back to Melbourne again, I am quite confident that there's going to be a saving of at least 1.5 liters at 110 kilometers per hour. And I'm being very conservative here. That means that we are well into the magical 1,000 kilometers driving range without an upgraded fuel tank and without jerry cans. Let's put that into dollars per year. At 20,000 kilometers per year, which is what my current average is, and $1.80 per liter of diesel, a 1.5 liter per 100 kilometer improvement in fuel economy is going to save you 300 liters of diesel a year, which is equivalent to $470. But from what I've seen, the most substantial savings in fuel consumption are actually between that 70 to 90 kilometer per hour range, which is pretty rare for me that I live in Metro Sydney. You're either in stop-start traffic or you're on the highway going somewhere far away. So that means that you might yourself see even better results than I have. So not only do you save some fuel, you also get more power, more torque, a lot more drivability, and in my opinion, a lot less wear and tear. But let us now address the big elephant in the room. In relation to warranty, yes, if Toyota can prove that the damage has occurred as a result of the tune, your warranty is void, and I accept that. But if it is a known problem for many Land Cruisers and those other people don't have a tune, in court you can prove that the issue was likely not a result of the tune. It's the same with Toyota trying to void your warranty for a GVM upgrade when there is nothing related to the actual upgrade that went wrong. In the way of reliability, I think that the tune will improve it, but this also comes down to how you drive your cruiser. The tune makes the same amount of power at 1000 to 2000 RPM as the stock map did at maximum peak power. However, if you go beyond this 2000 RPM, with the Just Auto's tune, you're making more than 40% additional power and torque than factory, which of course is going to stress everything that is attached to the engine. But if you drive the car normal without flogging it everywhere, the gearbox and all the components such as the diffs and drive shafts, etc., will experience forces that they have been engineered and validated to cope with, plus the added benefit of far less wear to the engine and gearbox due to the lower RPM that I've already spoken about. If you drive the Land Cruiser like a sports car, especially you're always having the pedal to the metal, you're probably going to break something and use a lot more fuel because you're adding 40% more force through the system. So as you can see, it is a two-sided argument on that front, just depends on why you got the tune to begin with and how you're going to drive your cruiser. But in my personal experience, I have had every single car and motorbike that I have owned for the past 20 years tuned, and I've never had a single issue, even racing multiple times a month. All you have to do is service it properly and have some mechanical sympathy. Now we got that out of the way, let's go back to the Just Auto's engine tune. And if you ask me, the money was well spent, and it's going to come back to me in the way of savings over time, especially when I get the trailer and start towing and start doing more interstate travel. But more importantly than saving the money, it is actually the driving range increase that matters the most to me. Being able to reach 1,000 kilometers without having to fill up means I can go from Sydney to Melbourne, Sydney to Brisbane, etc. And that's something that I've been targeting for a very long time. So I'm quite happy with the tune. So what do you think? Do you agree with my analysis of this tune, or do you think I got it wrong? Make sure you let me know in the comments below. And if you like this video, hit subscribe. It genuinely keeps me motivated to put in the hours it takes to make this content with no sponsors. And make sure to check out the next video while you're here because I reckon you'll enjoy it. Thank you for watching and see you next time.